Hello everyone, and I would like to welcome you to a new episode Behind the Wealth. I am again with Elias Dimopoulos, one of the senior accountants of Silver & Young Chartered Accountants, and we want to pick up the conversation where we left it last time, financial planning in different stages of life. And now we need to go to the next stage, probably 60 and over. But before we go to that, please allow me to say the standard quote that whatever we say here, it is a general advice and it is not a specific advice, as I don't know your specific details of your circumstances. So please give us a call on 96007760 if you want a specific advice, but whatever we call today, it is for a general advice. Hello Elias, and welcome back. This time we do the recording from our homes as we restricted with COVID restrictions, and welcome.
Hi, Dimitri. Thanks for having me. Despite the COVID restriction, life goes on. And planning should be adapted, I guess. So
Absolutely.
the 60s is a very interesting, 60s and after, basically. It's a very interesting age, I think, especially for planning and financial planning. We reach this age that we're gonna basically see the results of all these efforts during the previous years, and especially what has happened with our retirement. So I guess a very common question that you might be asked is, do I have enough money to retire? Is that true?
Yeah, that's really the first question. People actually from 50 and over, they usually start this question. But of course, 60, it is the ultimate question. Probably 9 out of 10 clients we have that they are around 60 or just a year before, 2 years before 60 or just cross 60. That's the first question when they come and see us. Do I have enough money to retire to the level I want to retire? And could be from $30,000, $40,000 a year to $150,000, $200,000 a year. It doesn't really matter. It depends on the circumstances. This is an anxiety to the client. It's an anxiety when you are 60 and you know you have only 5 or 6 or 7 years or 10 years even for working years to produce, and then suddenly you ask the question, do I have enough? This question should not be asked at that stage. This question should be asked at the earlier stages, at the early 40s, early 30s, to plan for that particular time. And that at 60, ideally, you don't need to ask this question. But probably the question you should ask, okay, how much can I spend at retirement with my current income? Because I know I covered my basics, the 50, 60, 80,000 dollars a year, or 100, or whatever it is, that amount.
Then I guess the question, obviously, it makes sense that you should think of that in the early ages, so you are prepared once you reach that stage. But if I'm really at 60s, and I guess it comes to in two different questions. So what do you do? One, if I don't have enough, how can I increase my balance, most likely my super fund or my savings account? Two, how can I maintain that balance so I can increase basically the life of this annuity that is going to be paid to me as I'm gonna be in retirement.
Again, it takes a bit of planning by looking into our budget, our lifestyle that we live at that last stage before retirement. There is a bit of tax planning and some shifting of money from one asset to another sometimes. So for example, if we have an investment property, we probably let it go and do whatever it's supposed to do, the investment property to be invested over 12, 15 long years, long period time. Don't be quick to sell so you can have cash available for retirement. Don't panic. And the other thing is a very common strategy, of course, is the transition to retirement. So if you can contribute more money and use these extra contributions, which is now from July 1st, it is $27,500 concessional contributions. If we can max it up this amount of dollars to the super by taking out of daily or monthly budget, put it to your super to increase the capacity for retirement. Another thing that we probably need to think about is the time of the retirement. So if you retire at 63, it's a lot different than if you retire at 65. Say you are 60, if you retire at 63, or you retire at 65, or you retire at 67, believe me, these 5 years makes a lot of difference in how much money you will have available as a safety mechanism for retirement. People underestimate the last 5 or 7 or 10 years of your retirement, because already you accumulated a lot of funds over the period. Hopefully they produce a lot more returns to make sure you retire comfortably. And also there is another very, very important issue. Retirement is not just one period in life. Usually the retirement is 3 periods in life. One period is the early stage of retirement, say 65 to 75, that we are young, still healthy, capable, we have the desire and the need to go for, I don't know, for traveling, for restaurants, for have a lifestyle that we have. Nothing really from when we were 62 or 65 before we retire, almost the same, and even more, because we want to do things that we haven't done because we didn't have the time, and now we have the time. That's the first stage. The second stage is the 60, the 75 and onwards, a little bit for 5 or 10 years, that we already done everything. We traveled the world. We went there, we bought the caravan and we traveled all around Australia, ticked all these boxes. And then we're still healthy, we still have mental capacity, we still have mobility, we still have a desire to, to enjoy a meal, but not every day, not every Saturday, not every Sunday. We just take it easier. So this is the second stage. And of course, there is the third stage, which is a bit doom and gloom, the stage that we use a bit of mobility when you cross, say, the 80, 85, whatever it is for each one of us. So the question is how we manage this spending over these 3 periods of life.
So you touched on a lot of interesting issues there. So that I found very interesting, those 3 different stages as you described them, basically as the more active, and then slowly we slow down. My favorite, I guess, strategy from a tax perspective anyway, is this supranational recontribution strategy. Can you explain a bit with an example, I guess, how can we take advantage of this recontribution strategy in order to boost our savings?
Yeah, this is a very important. Say, for example, it is me and my wife. If I die, all my super goes to my wife, tax-free.
Yes.
If she dies, all her super goes to myself, tax-free. Of course, if she wants to do that, and if I want to do that, so through my will and through my beneficiary, nominated beneficiary. But just hypothetical, we want all the assets to pass to each other. The problem becomes if the last person says my wife, and then after that is our children. But our children, of course, are adult children now. They work on their own. They have their own income and their own assets. They are over 18 or 20. So if the last person dies, this person, they transfer the super to the beneficiary, but the beneficiaries have to pay the extra marginal tax, taking the super from the parents because they are not tax dependent. So if they were tax dependent, of course we don't pay. If we have, for example, a child that is maybe disabled and he depends on me, it doesn't really matter how old he or she is. Or if I have another person, my brother, and he wants to get this superannuation because I want him to get this superannuation, and he's depending on me from tax purposes for me to fund his lifestyle because he lives with me. Of course, it doesn't pay, but usually 9 out of 10 circumstances, the last person who survives the couple, the wealth passes from super to the children, and they are not dependent. So what it does, the super recontribution is we take all the money out of the super as in pension phase, say when we cross the 67, 70 year old, and we recontribute it back to the super. This is then when the next generation receives this money, will be no an extra marginal tax rate will pay, will be tax free.
So basically, the tax-free portion is increased, and it comes down to the next generation. So basically, we have a cross-generation on transfer of assets in a tax-free way.
And of course,
What about
the limits, you can refer the limits if you want.
the 3 years bring forward rule? Basically,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
allows you to do $300,000 in 1 year by bringing forward the next 2 years. Another interesting strategy that I found lately is with the new rules that just changed with the previous year is the ability to take advantage of unused concessional contributions from prior years. So can you tell us a bit about this strategy?
Yeah, this is for the people who didn't max out the concessional contributions, the 27 and a half this year or 25,000 last year and all the years before. Then they can go back and say, okay, a year ago, 2 years ago, and 3 years ago, I didn't max it out. So they can max it out for the 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and make them all the contributions now because maybe they took 2, 3 years off. And this is not relevant to over 60s. Is this relevant to any stage in life? Say a mom stayed home for 5 years and they suddenly go back to the $150,000 and they can go and contribute this money to the super. They don't need to pay the mortgage as such. Then they can do these recontributions and taking the missing contributions over the last years. And correct me, it is 5 years, correct?
It is 5 years, but you can go as far back as 2019. But what I find interesting once you reach, I guess, 60 or 65 is even if you don't have the cash available, you can draw down that money from your super fund and then recontribute them back in. And in this way, by doing this circular motion, it generates a big tax deduction on that year.
Correct.
So
you can take them out as a pension or as money out of the super because you crossed the 60, for example, and then recontributing to your accumulation part of your super as concessional contributions and take the deduction. And this is a very tax effective way to minimize tax and pop up again the super account.
another question that I want to basically to ask. So I guess the question of how much do I need for retirement? I guess that's something that you can help people work with. So how do you help the clients find out how much they need for retirement? Can you explain a bit about that?
Don't forget, when we have this question and we say, I need for retirement that this much money, when we go through the budget, we may be still paying off our mortgage. We may be pay a lease in the car. So we have to be really very careful how we construct that budget and go in detail, really with a fine comb to see, okay, we have a 5 years in front of us or 10 years in front of us to retire. What do I need really to do to be ready for retire? Say like a warm up before you go to the race. So I need to pay probably my mortgage if I can. So I don't need to use my super to pay the last part of my mortgage. Secondly, if I have a car and I pay lease, maybe I consider to pay off the lease in the next 2, 3, 5 years. So when I retire, I have a debt-free environment. I don't owe any money to anyone. So if we can make sure that we have this safety mechanism or this plan already done and we're sure, because we know we only owe a little bit of mortgage and I'm confident the next 5 or 7 years I'm going to pay it off, and my lease is only for another 2 years I'm going to pay for the car is going to be paid it off. Then we go, okay, how much I need probably for the lifestyle without paying these mortgages and this extra lease. So we take the budget and we take this amount out of the budget. And then suddenly when I need today, for example, a net income of $80,000, maybe after I pay the home and the car lease, for example, as an example, maybe I need only $65,000. And what we do usually, we of course communicate this with the client and we discuss a lot of different scenarios and worst scenario, best scenario. And it comes roughly to somewhere between 65 and 80 if we use these numbers as an example. And then with that base, we go and see if we have enough money for retirement. Projecting forward on a normal return of the risk tolerance if we have enough money. So if you are conservative, we projected with a smaller return. If you are a bit more high growth person, projected with a higher return. But always in a more conservative way we try to do, because we can't predict the future. And we want to be more conservative in the prediction than take it easy and expect that we have high returns all the time.
Basically, in a nutshell, so you do a budget and then you take into consideration what liabilities and what other responsibilities might be. And then this way you work out a number, or you work out a number in collaboration with the client.
Yeah, and then after that, what is the next step of that? Okay, we have now a lump sum, which could be an investment property. It could be in the name of the couple. We could have two superannuation funds, one for the lady, one for the gentleman, or for the couple, and then we can have some cash reserves. We bundle this up and we say, okay, the property is going to have, say, for example, 4-5% return because it is in this area, and we do some expectation and research how much we expect to have the property and worth it at 5 or 10 years later from now. The super fund is probably a lot easier because we have the past 5 or 10 years returns of the super fund, and we can say roughly in that boundaries it could be, although we don't guarantee and nobody knows past returns is not a guarantee for the future returns, but it gives us an indication. If your Australian super produce 7 or 8% return, more likely it's going to produce between 5 and 7% return in another 10 years. So we do that. And then, of course, the cash, we don't make too much of account of them, because when we go to retirement, there is few things. Ladies want to do small renovation, for this or that, or the gentleman want to buy, I don't know, the boat that they didn't buy for a fishing. So there is always something extra, or they want to travel. So we leave a bit of buffer out of the budget. And the strategy then, it has to be very thoughtful how you manage the retirement phase, the stage one, because don't forget, the money will come out of the investments, but we need constant income for us to support ourselves because we don't have wages.
So basically, we shouldn't rush spending everything. We should slow down.
Yeah.
So we should control basically the spending.
Correct. And then this is on the personal circumstances. If you have a property which doesn't owe money to anyone, it's a debt-free, then we have $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 comes out of that for you to spend. Then we take $50,000 out of your super to complement the $80,000 you may want to have as a spending money, progressively, monthly. And if say you don't have any investment property and you have just super funds, you allocate this, you write a pension to yourself from your super fund, and then in a certain time, it depends on your level of your assets, you may be then eligible for the Centrelink income, because your income and your assets is going to be lesser than the thresholds, and then we can have these $50 extra a fortnight or $100 a fortnight or whatever it is to accommodate, because by law you are entitled to that income. Of course, if you have $1.6 million in your super fund, it will take a bit longer for you to access the Centrelink compared if you have only $300,000 or say $600,000 in your super fund. And the another point I want to make is, for the high income earners or the high balance superannuation funds that you go to retirement and you have a substantial amount of money, we really do the bucket approach many times, not all the time, but many times. And what is the bucket approach? If I need $80,000 for me to retire, I need to insulate this $80,000 for a year, 2 years, or 3 years. The reason is, if the market drops like a COVID in January, February 2020 and drops 20-30%, I don't want to sell the share portfolio to fund the $80,000 divided by 12, say $6,000 or $7,000 that the person needs to get spending money to live their lifestyle. So what we do part of the bucket, we really do conservative approach. The money is still there in a very, very safe mechanism like bonds and term deposits that really they don't produce a lot of income, but they don't fluctuate the capital. And the rest we put in a little bit more standard investments because we have time in front of us, 2 years, say, to recover. And all the dividends feeds the bucket of the cash. So we don't need to sell and crystallize profits and losses if we don't want. So it's a bit not complicated. It's simple, but it's a bit difficult to explain in a few minutes. But the moral of the story is one bucket is to make sure that we have enough funds for the next year, 2 years. So we don't really care if the super fund or the funds under management drop a little bit, 5 or 10%, and I'm going to sell on stress because I need the cash to fund my lifestyle. And the other bucket is the long term that it goes normal as when we were in accumulation phase to invest, to reinvest, to dividend reinvest. Also, the dividend goes to the cash flow. But say invest and for capital growth.
So look, what you're saying, it might sound simple for you, but it's complicated, I guess, for many, many people. And that's why they should seek professional advice. And that's why they should talk to Silver Young Private Wealth, I guess.
Can I add that this also for that 60 and over, if they have an SMSF, is a very important point who controls the SMSF if they're not well enough later on. This is a very important part. I really believe on that and strong who is in control of this SMSF if you have multi-generation SMSF. This is point one. Point two, if the one of the partners are not financially educated because she is a PhD doctor in medicine, but she doesn't really or he doesn't really care about money, and the other half is the money, needs also this to be addressed. How is going to manage if something happens to the person who controls the funds to that? And this is all can be done. It just needs to be addressed. It's nothing hard. There is a lot of solutions and easy solutions. Just we need to address it. As we say, we need to address to have a will, to have a power of an enduring power of attorney. This is the stage more than important. We needed to address it, to have binding nominations correctly, do a recontribution strategy for tax effectiveness, and do concessional contributions if we are still working before retirement to take the maximum tax effectiveness. If we don't ask the question and we don't engage someone, it's very hard to address this all in a simple way and in a timely manner and in an effective manner. Most people believe the all value profession has to add is how much performance you're going to give me on my $50, $100, $500,000. This is probably 20% of the importance. The more important is all the other stuff that person does for you has really more value than that percentage if he has 10% or 5% return or 12% return. But most people concentrate just the return on the investment, but it's not that.
So the real value is beyond just the return. It's the real value is on planning, on preparing for all the possible scenarios, the unexpected and the expected, I guess, and also constructing this in a way that it is easy to be done by the client.
Correct. And the value is, and the older I grow and the more I'm in that type of work, the value is to implement the strategy. Not to take the strategy and a folder with 50, 100 pages explaining all in nice words, all ticked, compliant, all approved by ASIC, and put it on the bottom drawer. The value is to implement the strategy and then review the strategy every 6 months or every year.
So it is basically the value is the same way as going to your doctor and getting the prescription, but buying the drugs and keeping them in your drawer and never taking them and expecting that you're gonna get well.
Correct. And I tell you something, probably 2, 3 out of 10 clients, they take the advice and they do very small amount of the advice implementing, because time is busy, and because they didn't have the time to fill the forms, or it's too hard, and 1000 excuses. And then what it happens, uh, they're not a lot better, and they don't take full advantage of the holistic approach that approach every single thing. I mean, for example, to have a will and enduring power of attorney, it's no brainer, but 7 out of 10 people don't have it, even at 60. But it's no brainer. You don't need to go someone specialist with qualifications and registrations to tell you that you need to do a will and an enduring power of attorney. But people don't do it.
And the reality is, because I've experienced that from the other side, it is incredibly hard for a spouse to do something on behalf of their spouse if, let's say, they are incapacitated for whatever reason, and if they don't have the enduring power of attorney. It's amazing how many difficulties and obstacles you're going to have to go through in order to be able to do a simple thing as pulling $100 out of the bank account. So I agree. It is something that sounds very basic, but it doesn't happen in most of the cases. Look, in conclusion, like as summarizing all these videos that we've done together, I think what I have concluded is, in order to get financial success, you need to have a good plan and stick with the plan, implement the plan, and then the earlier you start, the better it is. Do you agree with that, or do you have to add something?
I'm glad, because I'm very happy, because I realize now that you were listening what I was talking about all this series. So that's absolutely true. You need to have a plan, and then you need to review the plan, and then the plan has to be adapted to your different life stages and your different circumstances, and then you need to implement the plan and go again the cycle again and again the cycle again and again the cycle again. And as you can see, it changes slowly, slowly, slowly as you grow older. And the younger you start, the better off you are. I can tell you, if people start at 20, 22, at 40, 45, if you are a normal middle class tradesperson, professional, really, really the passive income, it's a big percentage of their actual income. And then at 60, then you don't work anymore for money. You work because you want to work, because you're happy what you do and you're enjoying what you do. Of course, if you haven't been divorced, if you haven't been, say, have health issues, there is a lot of caveats. I'm not saying this is going to be for everyone, but it is doable. And we could see this to a lot of our clients. People who started 2022, they're a lot more comfortable at 35, 40. And I'm sure they're going to be extremely comfortable when become another 10 years later at 50. The other thing before we close is, at 60 or 70 when you retire, you haven't stopped investing, because you're still investing, and you're still reinvesting your whatever money you have in your super to make sure it's enough when you are up to 90, 92. And one of the greatest mistakes the third stage of the people in their superannuation do, you know what it is? They get a fear that they don't have enough. So
Yes.
they close themselves. I don't have enough. Maybe I don't have enough. And what it happens? Something happens to them at 80, 75, 79, 82, and they leave $1 million back when they didn't need to leave $1 million back. $500,000 would be good. And they deprive themselves all these years. And because I'm Greek, and so Greek, I can see this is an ethnic problem in our Greek community here. They squeeze everything for the person, for the kids, the grandchildren, everyone else, because the uncertainty and the fear, I won't have enough. Just a comment about my background, because I can see that in a lot of our or some of our clients. If you have any questions regarding what we talked in all the videos of the different stages of financial planning in different life stages, please give us a call in our office 0296007760. subscribe to our YouTube or to our email if you want. Send it to your friends and your relatives. This is education material, and this 5 or 10 or 20 minutes you listen to this YouTube or Spotify as you're driving, it can trigger a lot of more action that you may be missing, or ideas that you never thought about. Till next time, have a good day, and thank you, Ilya, for be a partner in this conversation.
Thank you, Dimitri.
Thank you.